Welcome to another coding tutorial, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make text rain. The original text rain is an interactive installation done back in 1999 by Camille Utterback and Romy Ashitov. And it is an installation in which participants use the familiar instrument of their bodies to do what seems magical, to lift and play with falling letters that do not really exist. And I have two tutorials. One is drawing with webcam and the other one is interactive falling text rain. And in this tutorial, we'll be combining what we learned from those two videos to create our own implementation of text rain. To get the video streamed from our webcam, we need to use a method called createCapture, which is part of the p5 element class. And to do that, we need to first declare a variable. Let's call it video. And we're going to set video to the createCapture method. And the createCapture method can actually stream both audio and video, but because we're only going to be using the webcam output, I'm going to give it a first argument of video to get just the video stream. All right, let's click run. So here we have our sketch of the size 400 by 400. That is also one of the p5 element object. And we have our video capture here of the size what? Let's just check what is the video size by putting video.size, and then I'm going to print it out. All right, so it's of the size 640 by 480. And as you can see here, we cannot see both the canvas and the video stream on the same page. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set the width and the height to be half of the current size. So let's do width to be 320 and then height to be 240. And then I actually need to put this as the size of my canvas, and I want to resize the video, and I can do that by just putting video.size and then put in the arguments of the new width and height. And then now our new width and height is 320 by 240. Next, what I want to do is that I want to draw the video onto the canvas, and I can do that using a function called image. And image can take in at least 3 arguments. So the first one is going to be the image source, and in our case, it's going to be the video. And then the second and the third will be the x and y coordinate of the top left corner of where you want to paste the image or the video. So for us, we want to paste it at 0, 0 at the top left corner here. And actually, because the size of the video is of the same size of the canvas, that's why we don't need to put the 4th and the 5th. But if you want to resize it, let's say that we want it to be half the size of the width and half the size of the height, I can just put that in, and then now everything is resized. But that's not what we want, so I'm going to delete this. Now that we have the video on the canvas, what I want to do next is I want to draw a piece of letter. So I'm going to first declare a variable called t, and then I'm going to set t to a letter A. And then inside draw, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use a function called text, and text can take in 3 arguments. The first one is the text that we want to write, which is t, and then the second and the third will be the bottom left corner of where we want to place the text. So I'm going to declare x and y here, and how about we put x to be at, actually, let's set x to be equals to mouse x, and then y to be equals to mouse y. All right. How about I increase the size to 30? We can use the function called text size, and then I'm also going to draw an ellipse. And this ellipse is going to be at the location x and y, and let's give it a size of 10. I also will fill the ellipse with the color white, and then fill the text with the color red. So now, instead of actually setting it to the mouse location, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set x and y to be equals to width divided by 2, and then y to be equals to 1. And then I want to update the y location by 1 pixel at a time. So now the letter A is falling down. But to get the text rain that we want the letter to stop at an outline of my head and my body, right? And how we're going to approach this is that we're going to turn the video into black and white based on a threshold value. And to do that, we can use a function called filter, and we want to give it an argument called threshold. So actually, let's look at the reference page real quick. So filter applies an image filter to the canvas, and threshold converts the image to black and white. Pixels with a grayscale value above a given threshold are converted to white. The rest are converted to black. All right. The threshold must be between 0, which is black, and then 1, which is white. And if no value is specified, 0.5 is used. All right, so let's look at that. Let's click run. And this is at the threshold of 0.5. So how about we set a new threshold value at, let's say, 0.3, and then we're going to give it the second argument here, threshold value. All right. So you can adjust the threshold value that makes sense to your surrounding or your environment. Let me try, how about 0.25? Okay, I think it has to be, I think this might be okay right now at 0.27. We can adjust it later. Now that we turn the video into black and white, what we want to do is that we want to check the value where the bottom left corner of the letter is and see if the brightness there is above or below the threshold. And if it is above, then we move the letter down. But if it is below, then we move it up. So how would we do that? So first, we're going to use a function called get to get the color value of that specific pixel. And so how about I set the variable called color and then set it to video.get, and the arguments that we're going to put is the x and y coordinates of which pixel that we want to get the color value of. So x and y, and then instead of setting this at these locations, I'm going to put it back to mouse x and mouse y, and I want to print out the color. All right, so, oh, not x and y. What I want to print is color. So as you can see here, it is an array, a 1D array with 4 values, RGB and then alpha, right? And even though the mouse is actually on the canvas, but the return value is of the video that is here, right? Because as you can see here, my mouse is at the place where it's white. So if it is off the image or the video on the canvas, it should be 255, 255, 255, but it is not. So it's getting the pixel value of my video. All right. And so now we don't want the color value, we want the brightness value. So all we need to do is set another variable, let's call it B, and then I can use a function called brightness and then put in the color value in here. And then I'm going to print B as well. And if you look here, we get a value that is now between 0 and 100. And so this is going to be a value that we will check against the threshold value. Okay, so now what we need to do is that we need to set a conditional statement that says if B is greater than threshold value, but threshold value is between 0 and 1, right? So we also need to multiply this by 100 because the brightness value is between 0 and 100. Then we want to move the letter down, and now we don't need this one. So let's just try this to see what happens. And then we also need to set x and y back to this. All right, but as you can see, once it hit the black part, then it stops. But now when it hits the white part, then it keeps falling down, right? But then if I move up, what I want it to do is that I want it to also move up to the point where the black part is. Now we need to write an else statement. So let's do else, and this else is when b is less than the threshold value times 100, meaning that b is of the brightness value that is essentially black, right? So when it is black, then what we want to do is that we want to write another if statement that says if y is greater than 0, meaning that the string or the letter is on the canvas, and also b is less than the threshold value times 100. So if it's still black, then what we want to do is that we want to move the y location up. So we want to move it up to the very top of where the most black silhouette is. And then we keep rechecking the color value and the brightness value. So all right, let's try that. So now every time I move, it keeps rechecking to the very, very top point where b is still less than the threshold value times 100, right? All right, so now it went off the conditional statement here, right? And then now I can move up and down, and then the letter kind of moves up and down with me. Perfect. All right, so how about we put this inside a class? So let's come to this arrow here, click the plus sign, and then create file. And then I'm going to call this file letter.js. And then before we write a class, let's go to index.html and then come to this line of code here, copy and paste, and then put in the name of your new JavaScript file. And this is how you integrate a new file into the program. All right, so we're ready to write the letter class. So let's start with the word class and then letter. Okay, so inside the constructor function, what do we need? So we need the letter t, right? The variable t. And then I'm actually going to set it to a random value inside an array called alphabets, which we're about to create right now. So let's go back to sketch.js. Instead of setting t to the letter A, I'm going to create an array called alphabets, which is an array of uppercase letters. And then now we want to set these as the initial values of the letters, right? So let's go back to our class. So this dot x will be equals to width divided by 2, and then this dot y will be at 1. Okay, and then for display, what do we need? We need this part here where we draw the text, right? And actually, I don't want to display the ellipse anymore, and I just want to use the default text size, so we don't need this either. And then we need this dot for all of this. And then we also need a function, let's call it update, to check the pixel value and then move the letter down, right? And then we can delete this. Okay, so we need this dot here, here, here. Threshold value is a global variable, so it's okay. All right, and instead of setting 1 here, putting 1 here, why don't we create a new variable called this.dy to make it a little bit cleaner. Okay, so I think that should be it. So let's try to create just one letter object. So let's go back to sketch.js, and then I'm going to create a variable called L, and then inside setup, L will be a new letter object. Oh, actually, why don't we, instead of setting a fixed value here, let's do x and y as the parameters, and then we can just put it as arguments here. So width divided by 2 and then 1. And then now inside draw, we want to call the update method and the display method, right? So we should get the exact same thing. Okay, All right. And then how about we create a bunch of letters objects. So let's create an array called letters and then create another variable called num for the number of objects that we want to create. And then now we're going to write a for loop in order for us to create a bunch of letters object. But instead of setting it at the same x and y location here, actually y, I will keep it as at 1. So let's do y to be equals to 1, but x, I want to actually space out the letters evenly across the width. So what we can do is that we can divide the width by the number of letters, and then we can multiply it by I, and then we just replace x and y here. And then now I'm going to copy the for loop, and then we're going to call the update and the display method on all of the letter objects. Okay. How about I increase it to 30? Actually, one more thing that we forgot to do. So inside update, what I want to do is that I want to also write a conditional statement that says once the it's all black at the bottom, but as you can see here, as the letters hit the bottom of the screen, then I want it to fall back down again. So we can do if this dot y is greater than height, and yeah, let's do greater or equals to height, then we want to set this dot y to 1. Let's see if it works. All right. And then we can go back to Sketch again, and I don't want to put in the filter anymore. So the filter, the threshold value is still there, but we're only just putting in the video on the sketch. So it's not perfect right now because of the environment that I'm in and the threshold value that I use, but I think you get the idea. And if you have an environment where the background is totally white and then your silhouette is totally black, I think it will be a lot cleaner for you to play with, but this is already pretty fun. Also, what if instead of using random letters, you create a string of text that is a cool message or something? So this is pretty fun, and it is one implementation that you can use your webcam or a video source to create something interesting and interactive. Give this one a try.